gives the host community, as I keep saying, a level playing field or a more level playing field. That's the intent.
Do you have a follow-up?
And I appreciate that, but if it has to go into the court system, I think the municipality, at least in Hampstead's case, is going to be somewhat of a disadvantage because it's a much smaller community than a Manchester or Concord. But with that said, this is much better than what's in there.
Yeah, and I think that the spirit of this is to make sure that the department understands that this has to be a collaboration. If there's a reasonable request for safety enhancements, or if there are costs that the host community is going to potentially have, that there should be a negotiation on a pilot. And I think it is, doesn't bind the hands of the state or preclude the community from, taking action on their own, but I think it levels the playing field, and that's the whole intent.
Senator Whitley?
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. I represent the city of Concord, and there are a lot of state facilities here. And I think it's very important to include the municipalities in this conversation and to make it very clear that that's what is going to happen, because, that hasn't always happened in the past. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Senator Birdsall, you have another question?
Just a statement, and this is why I asked, because when I talked with the police yesterday, and it took HHS so long to agree to the MOU with the state police, so that the state police could agree to the it was a dominoes effect. It took so long. This will probably help, because if let's say the department is being unreasonable and letting an MOU go for a year without signing off on it, then at least the municipality has some option.
Okay. I just have a comment here, because I was aware of the issue dealing with getting that MOU in place with the state police. Just kind of throwing out there, because we're actually not going to exec this bill until Tuesday. As you can see, we've got a lot of amendments, and we've got some questions that need to be answered. If it would be possible to allow the state to contract with county sheriffs, with the county sheriff's department as a backup if there was an issue with contracting with state police. I just kind of throw it out there as an idea for you folks to consider.
I mean, I don't see that there's anything in this language that would prevent that. I think what it calls for is that the department has to work with the local community. If the safest way to ensure security in the event, I mean, there have been a couple of times recently that the Sununu centers had to have the state police come in. If the Rockingham County Sheriff's Department is the right way to do it, that seems to me it would be an operational MOU between them, but this makes sure that the community is protected. If it's Hampstead with I imagine, a fairly small police department, that they are not left holding the bag.
Again, Senator, thank you for your comments. As we know that we are really understaffed when it comes to our state police officers. And so if this facility is located in a small community, much like Hampstead, it might be easier for them to call upon the county sheriff's office. They'll get a quicker response time. So I want to make sure that there's a mechanism in here that will give them the flexibility. And the same thing with Concord or Manchester to its Merrimack County Sheriff or the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Department to go in. They might be able to respond much quicker than the state police can. That's the reason why I brought it up. So I just want to be able to give the municipalities some options. So,
and I will concur with that, only because in speaking with the police, the closest state police is Troop A in the northern part of Epping. So any call from even now with the MOU involved, unless there's a state trooper along 93, and it still is going to take 20 minutes to get there. If they get a call and the state trooper comes from Troop A headquarters, it's going to take them 45 minutes to get to Hampstead Hospital. So that actually might be a good viability, but we'd have to talk to the sheriff's office.
Right, we'd have to get their input, just an idea. Okay, are there any other questions on this, Senator Whitley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I had two amendments just ready to talk about. It's Amendment 1 and Amendment 4.
Okay, before we get into those, Senator Abbas, we're talking about Senator Bradley's amendment.
Oh, okay.
So Senator Abbas,
Thank you. The only concern I have with the Hampstead location is it's such a small community, and this it will impact the surrounding communities, unlike Concord and Manchester, at least not the same degree that it would. So this only allows for collaboration with the host community, not the surrounding. And that's one of the concerns that I have, is that it's a mile away from another community, so that it could have impacts on the surrounding communities as well. And I don't think that's being addressed by this amendment. If the Rockland County Sheriff
If
gets
the
involved.
committee wants to add, implement any reasonable request by the prospective community or surrounding communities, I would have no objection to that.
okay. Okay. Okay, Senator Whitley? Because you're a member of Judiciary, do you want to talk about your amendments now, or do you want to talk about them when we exec?
Just a quick comment, so everyone's
Okay.
on the same page. So the Amendment 1 is just deleting sections 5, 6, and
Yep.
7, which it sounds like the House is in agreement on. I think it sounds like everyone's in agreement on. And then this Amendment 4 is just, it was an attempt to fix 5, 6, and 7. So in my opinion, we don't even need to think about Amendment 4. And hopefully we could combine an amendment that just deletes those sections, because it feels like we're on the same page. That's
Okay,
it.
thank you. Are there any other questions? Senator Bradley?
Yeah, if I could just make a couple of comments based on the hearing on sort of the amendments that were before us. Administration and operation, it may well be, if it's the consensus of all of us, and I would agree with what I've heard, that if we don't want a private operator, potentially the best way to deal with that is to just add a sentence that says it shall not be operated privately. Then it doesn't matter whether it's operated or administered. It seems to be the intent. To me, that would be a clarification. So I also think that the date on the top of page 2 should be effective within 30 days of the effective date of the statute, and I'm assuming it's effective on passage. Yep.
Yep.
In the amendment, the replacement facility, I am not sure that we should lock ourselves into something that would, and it was in the Carson Edwards Amendment, Section 5 on page 4. So it would be my view personally that we should delete that section. It may well make sense to do it at some point in time when we know what we are facing, but to say that we're not going to take kids from another state may mean that other states won't take our kids, and having that loss of flexibility, I'd rather that we deal with it potentially in HB2 or another bill that the House might have. That's my own personal view, but.
Senator Birdsall?
The only concern I have about that is, here we go with the possibly increasing beyond the 18 beds. Now, how many beds, and we go into that debate about what's appropriate. Right now, we are pretty much all in agreement that 18, but once you start adding kids from out of state, 18, it may not be the ceiling.
Well, if the maximum is 18 beds, the maximum is 18 beds. And if we know that the intent is that we're not going to take kids from other states, but there may be times that we would need to send kids to other states on a temporary basis and vice versa. So, I don't know. That's my thought, but
Yes, Senator Abbas?
So, yeah, everyone has to excuse me. I was not involved in the debate about the amount of beds, which it's troubling that held this up because the testimony is there's no control over how many children are going to come here. So 12 may sound like a good idea, 18, 16, but that number is, it's on demand. That's what it is. So if we're going to have I understand we have to have some number in here, but if we're going to now take children from out of state, we reach that max, we then would have to send New Hampshire children out of state because we're at capacity because we took children from out of state. So I think we need to be careful with how we want to do this. And I'm not even saying you don't make it more than 18, but apparently I want this whole thing to fall apart over that conversation. I'm afraid to bring it up.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. I understand your frustration, but I think that, and I understand Senator Bradley's position as well. But we continue to work on the care aspect. There are going to be more changes to the system of care as we move forward. Don't forget, this is slated to open at this date of November 1st, 2024, and there could be a possibility that it might not be finished by then, but we have a very dedicated group of legislators and activists and advocates that have worked diligently on this continuance of care. And as you can see from the information submitted by Director Ribson, the drop in the number of children being committed there, and we are working diligently to continue to lower those numbers. And so that's why the idea of anywhere between 12 and with a surge, I hate to say surge capacity, but with the ability to have the capacity up to 18 is a reasonable number because of where we want to be by the time this new center opens. Granted, there could be circumstances that are completely out of our control where you might have something that happens, but we are looking at the everyday operations of this center. We are working together with the court system as well, especially through the Oversight Commission for Children's Services, to really work on reducing these numbers, to get kids the care they need in their communities where they have support systems rather than incarceration. And I believe Director Ribson said this is the last place we really want to put kids. We just don't want to arbitrarily put them. And I think that's why you've seen this drop from over, a 70 to 80 person facility at any given time drop way down to what it is now, 12. And we're going to continue to do that because we've come to the realization that incarceration is not always the best option for kids. And we're going to continue to do that. We're going to continue to work on that. So that's why I feel comfortable with the 12 to 18 at the max,
And if I may.
Yes, please.
I'm comfortable with that number too. I'm just concerned if we would then have children coming from out of state, would that number be enough? And that's I don't want to run into another problem down the road until we at least know we're ready to go. And this is a concern that I have. And
Yeah. Okay. Senator Avard?
Yeah, barring an apocalypse and stuff like that. I'm just curious, with the architecture, like I said, barring an apocalypse, is there a possibility that they could expand if needed? Meaning, you got your 18 beds, but my gosh, something happened, something in the water, whatever, and we had an influx of a number of people. So in the future, could there be in the architect, the ability to add on if needed.
Yeah, I mean, you could, we could talk about, you would have to do additional building at some point, right? So, I don't think we would build additional beds right now, but you could anticipate that if you had to build additional beds, this is how we would do it. This is where we would build it on as part of the planning process, so that if we find down the road we needed to expand, that we would have that ability to make that decision down the road and not have our hands tied. I think the other thing that we're thinking about, and I did hear people talk about it today, I think I even heard Representative Edwards talk about it, is the idea of flexible use of space. Because really the 18 isn't so much about the fact that we expect to have 18 kids, it's that we have to be able to separate kids based on needs, right? Oftentimes we'll have one female, right? And if we have units, say you have a 5-bed unit, an 8-bed unit, and a 5-bed unit, and you have one female in a 5-bed unit, well, now you only have 13 beds for the rest of your population. And if you have 14 boys, all of a sudden you're in trouble, right? So the idea of having some ability to have some still secure but movable walls to be able to reconfigure unit sizes, those are some of the things that we've talked about in concept with architects that we're going to be looking into as well, to give us some flexibility in terms of being able to how to use those 18 beds in ways to appropriately separate but keep kids safe. It can't be those little accordion things. Kids will rip through those. It has to be something more secure than that. But there's some ideas about how to do things like that.
Sure, Representative Edwards, come on up.
Thank you. And to your point, Senator, I think one of the other potential benefits of co-location is that if there's a step down possibility where we hit too many kids, you could do a risk assessment under an MOU and perhaps move somebody into the co-located site. So there's a lot of possibilities, but I think co-location could be part of a worst case scenario.
Okay. Okay, are there any other questions, especially our fellow senators from Health and Human Service that you might have?
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.
Sure, not a problem. Okay, so are there any other questions to come forward at this point? Okay,
Motion to come up.
okay, Senator Gannon moves, we come out of executive session. Is there a second? Who said second? Oh, Senator Chandler? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we're out of executive session. It's now, why don't we,
Them too.
Representative Edwards, Representative Lynn, Senator Whitley, and myself, are going to meet upstairs in the Senate conference room at 1 o'clock. That way it's going to give time folks to
Yeah,
get some
I
lunch.
know.
Okay, Kim, I'm looking at, oh, here it is.